Good afternoon. This is actually a very special occasion for two reasons. First, our guest this afternoon is Mr. Paul Davids. He's here from California to take in New York and to do some business. And you probably all know him from the Showtime movie, which was very popular. Came out how many years ago now?
We're going on the 20th anniversary.
And this starred Martin Sheen.
Yeah. Kyle MacLachlan, Dwight Yoakam.
And it was a wonderful period piece. I mean, they had the authentic cars from that period, and it looked just like it was shot in 1947, around the time of the Roswell crash. If you haven't seen it, it's out on DVD. And the second occasion here that makes this special is this is our first live YouTube feed. Well, live in the sense that we're actually recording it specifically for YouTube. Although I understand that in the future maybe we will actually do some live streaming so that our fans out there and our friends, associates, can watch the interviews as we do them. But this is as close to real as you're going to get today. So, Paul, we're not going to forget about this. Paul, I met you quite a number of years ago. In fact, it was before the Roswell movie. I was then editing a magazine called UFO Universe, and a number of its sister publications, UFO Files, I think it was.
Was it in Connecticut that we met at a conference?
John White?
That was it.
Oh, good memory, good memory. And we did an excellent interview. And of course, now Paul is, would you consider yourself primarily a filmmaker?
Yes.
Yes.
I've done about 10 independent feature films now,
Also,
documentaries, and with actors.
Also, too, Star Trek. You've written novels for the Star Trek.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
To correct the second.
Oh, well, certainly.
No, the Star Wars novels were the early 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was after Return of the Jedi, and there was a long space of a number of years there before we got to the next one in the series. So convinced Lucasfilm to let us, meaning my wife Hollis and myself, write a series of books to sort of keep the characters alive, and particularly in the minds of kids, because they were oriented toward young readers. But we did The Love of Darth Vader, The Lost City of the Jedi, Zorba the Hutt's Revenge. You may not know Zorba, but no, he's actually he's Jabba's father. I
have to admit, see, I'm a paranormal 14 UFO researcher.
Less into the science fiction.
Yes.
But then came Mission from Mount Yoda, Queen of the Empire, and Prophets of the Dark Side. Mm-hmm. And these were all around the world, many languages. It was really great.
In fact, you know, there is a certain degree of adversity between science fiction and the paranormal. There seems to be a belief on the part of the sci-fi crowd that all of this is nonsense, or pretty much all of it. And what was your feelings along that line in the beginning?
My own personal feelings, I got sort of sucked into the topics of UFOs and the paranormal and life after death and other topics that are often considered fringe topics by the so-called mainstream. I got sucked in through personal experience, because when I was younger, and before you've had direct exposure to any of this, you've only got what you have to go on, what your friends tell you, and what you may have seen on TV, what you may have read, but there's nothing like personal experience to galvanize you into a different way of looking at things, and that's what happened to me with UFOs that eventually resulted in my making the Roswell film for Showtime.
Well, now, you, if I recall correctly, you had a UFO sighting that kind of changed your thinking on this. Was it your son looking out the window or something?
It was my daughter.
Your daughter, okay.
Yeah, it was it makes a great story, so
yes,
I don't have to count it.
Yes.
Well, she was 9 at the time, and I had just finished up my work on the Transformers show. I was the production coordinator for Marvel, all the original Transformers cartoons. And we had wound down. It was the early in 1987. So on February 25th, 1987, I'm working in my home office. My daughter is home after the school day. It's around 4:30 in the afternoon, and she's upstairs, and she screams at me, "Daddy, get upstairs right now. I see a flying saucer." And my reaction was, oh, it's probably a Goodyear blimp, and she's interrupting me again. But she insisted that it was a flying saucer. So I ran upstairs, and she pointed out her window, and my 6-year-old son came in at about the same time. We're all looking out the window at a flying saucer. Not a Goodyear blimp, let's get that straight. Not a helicopter, not a weather balloon. I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. It was classically saucer-shaped. You know, it was sort of a dull gray. So it was daylight, you know, 4:30 in the afternoon. Soup bowl upside down on the top, that was the shape, you know. An upside down plate, meaning a right side up plate, and then a shallow bowl on the bottom. Maneuvering like I'd never seen anything maneuver. It didn't have any exhaust, it didn't make a sound, and it descended from a dramatic sky, and we stepped out on the roof to watch it, and it approached us, and it came pretty close. I mean, it was over the neighbor's house across the street, and kind of low, and then over the road in front of our house, and there it was. It hovered, it had a little wobble to it, and then it would fly sideways, you know, without a wobble, and we watched it for minutes, and swooped out across the valley where we live, looking down at it then, and then, bang, disappears, gone, like never been there.
When you say disappears, it shot straight up or
No.
it flipped off?
It was gone. It just like it was just. This is one of the things about it that really upset me from the point of view of your rational mind at first, because I kept trying to say to myself, what happened? Could I have glanced away for an instant, and did it swoop off to the side? Was it concealed by trees? And no, I don't think that ever happened. It was heading toward, going down over the valley. It went over some very tall palm trees, and it was heading toward a 3-story tenement house that had once been an old 3-story brick school building, and then no more. Gone. So Tim, to wrap up the experience, it was February 25th, which I found out later was the anniversary of what they call the Battle of Los Angeles.
It was the anniversary
of that UFO incident from
Synchronicity.
Yes, and it also happened at a point in time where the previous November there had been a very famous UFO case that even hit Time magazine over Alaska. It may have been near Fairbanks. It was Japan Airlines, I think flight 1647 if I've got it right, heading for Alaska, and the pilot let it be known, radioing to the ground, that he could see a mother ship, cube-shaped, 2 times the size of an aircraft carrier, he said, with saucers flying to and from. Wow. And of course the skeptics, the skeptics, you know, like Phil Klass, who was with us in those days and would debunk everything before he even knew the details. He would already have it classified as either a weather balloon or the planet Jupiter. And this, he said, was the planet Jupiter. Yeah. And when Phil Klass got into the act on that one, then all of the radar reports suddenly vanished. But they did have the radar reports for a while, and everything was confirmed, and this thing happened. Never mind that, unfortunately, the pilot, Captain Tarauchi, was let go for having opened his mouth about what he saw. But so, I mean, that was on the West Coast, albeit Alaska. So I wondered, you know, was that true? Was that thing, cube-shaped thing, hanging around for a couple of months? Was the saucer I saw something like the ones he saw coming? I don't know. I don't know what I saw, but it was as clear as a truck on the street. And that started me taking UFOs, saucers, very seriously. I started reading everything I could about the subject, and that's when I came across the Roswell incident for the first time.
How did you hear about Roswell?
Well, It was actually Roy Thinnis, the star of The Invaders.
I one time introduced Roy Thinnis at a UFO conference.
Now, Roy, I think, played David Vincent, a UFO investigator. First, I started talking to everybody about UFOs, and I got to talk to Robert Wise, director of Day the Earth Stood Still. He was a believer. He told me that while he was making that movie that he'd had inside information from people from Washington and engineers who'd been working on these things, and he began taking it all very seriously based on what he heard at that time. He introduced me in turn to Roy Thinnis and said, why don't you invite Roy out to the house, show him where you saw this thing, maybe he'll write up a report, which he did, and Roy sent it to the Center for UFO Studies in Chicago. That's how I met Don Schmidt, famous Roswell researcher. You know, Roy brought over a lot of UFO books he said I should read. But he brought over Clear Intent, which is one of the great classics. He brought over some Donald Keto books. He told me I had to read Report on Unidentified Flying Objects by Captain Ruppelt. And one of the interesting things there was that Ruppelt goes into great detail about the saucer sightings of the summer of 1947, and a lot of the descriptions of them were just exactly like what I had seen. So I said to myself, look, if I want to have the theory that maybe what I saw was some recently constructed experimental craft from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, then how do I explain the fact that people were seeing the same thing in 1947? Because the Jet Propulsion Laboratory wasn't involved back then. So, you know, I did my own investigations. I did the readings that were recommended by Roy Thinnis, and he brought me a book about the Roswell incident and said, I think that this really was alien contact, and that we recovered one there in 1947. And that's what started me on the path to making what became the Showtime movie.
Now, originally it was supposed to be for HBO, was that not true?
It was. Well, originally, you see, my sighting was in 1987. And I met Don Schmidt when he came out to my house to sort of investigate. He did a story for International UFO Reporter about it, after having been connected through Roy Thinnis. So, it took us a couple of years to get network interested. I wrote a first draft. Everybody in Hollywood rejected it. It was tragic. I was so upset. No studio wanted to touch it. No network. Then,
why did they consider it was a hot potato, or?
Their general response was, if it had happened, I would have heard of it. And we don't want to get egg on our face by getting off on a tangent claiming something that's true that's going to blow up in our face.
If you had wanted to do it as a science fiction movie, you probably wouldn't have had that obstacle.
Wouldn't have had those objections, but didn't want to do that way. We wanted to do the story as it was reported by the people that were there, particularly the Marcel family, Jesse Marcel and his son Jesse Jr. So eventually, I met up with Jeremy Kagan, who I had gone to film school with at the American Film Institute, and I pitched it to Jeremy. I knew he had directed a bunch of things for HBO, Scott Joplin's story, and he'd done a few features, including The Chosen. So Jeremy loved the idea, and he took it to HBO, and they made a development deal with us. And so now we were seeing a little money after a few years of work. And then they hired Arthur Koppett, who was a very famous and wonderful American playwright, to write a screenplay. And he wrote draft after draft after draft. They kept him at it. First they had Jeremy and me write a treatment, because they didn't want to shoot the script I had written at first. So we wrote a treatment, and then we all ended up with story credit. But Arthur did what I thought was brilliant screenplay, and then HBO decided after a year and a half they didn't want to do it. They showed us to the door because they had another flying saucer movie they wanted to do instead. which was the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman remake.
Well, there you go.
That's what they made instead of Roswell at HBO. And, you know, we ended up then 6 months later being picked up by Showtime to make it. It was wonderful working with them. Mm-hmm. We had an ample budget to do it really, really well.
Well, it was done well. I'm not big on cable TVs, movies, and series and stuff like that, but this one really looked the part. I mean, it was perfectly set in that period.
We had all the right people working on it. You know, a lot of work went into the costumes, and as you said, getting all the right cars and recreating the military bases. As a matter of fact, we built the front of the Roswell base, you know, for some of the scenes.
Where did you shoot it?
Well, we shot in many places, and nothing in actual Roswell. And with apologies to the people of Roswell who've been pretty wonderful through the years, you know, they have a museum there about UFOs now. But Roswell today is just full of Denny's and Wendy's, and
yes.
you know, it doesn't look like the 1947 town. So we chose Bisbee, Arizona, which still looked very 1947. It had hills, which is very non-Roswell.
Yes.
So the people in Roswell recoiled when they saw these hills in their town in our movie, but it worked well, and we shot at a ranch near there. And then we used the Van Nuys Airport for some of the scenes of the Roswell military base, because it was a World War II airport.
Did you talk to anyone who had actually been involved in the Marcells?
Oh, yes. Oh, I talked to everyone who was there, was still alive, who had anything to say. Now, the way that happened was through Don Schmidt and his co-author at that time, Kevin Randall, because when I optioned the book they were writing, they were still researching it, and I went down to Roswell repeatedly with them. As a matter of fact, I drove them from witness to witness at some of these places, and there were a couple that I wasn't permitted to go in and talk. One in particular, Sheridan Cavett. But the others I spoke to, you know, and I got to listen to the granddaughter of the town's sheriff, and Jesse Marcel Jr., and the mortician Glenn Dennis. And, you know, people then were willing,
how
ready to talk.
How much of it did you buy, and how much did you say, yeah?
I bought it. After hearing from people that were there at that time, and hearing at the extent that the military went to bring about silence on this issue, and to sort of just wipe it out of the consciousness, it was very emotionally impactful to be in direct contact with these people and really get their story. And I do want to say that as our movie was coming out, the Pentagon was working on a new Roswell report, its famous mogul balloon report. And I didn't buy that, but I was really interested in the fact that they put out like a 1,000-page report, right? Of which, I don't know, 800, 850 pages of it are, you know, diagrams and reports that have very little to do with this at all. But it made it impressive. Made it impressive. And one of the things that helped convince me that the Roswell incident was real was all the work that the government went to convince us that it wasn't. I mean, can you imagine? Has the government ever tried to convince us that ghosts don't exist? And this Roswell incident happened 50 years ago, and they went to so much work to say it didn't happen. Well, no, you got it all wrong. Honest, we're telling the truth this time.
We want to move on to some recent subjects, but I do have one last question.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would, if you could go back and change about the movie?
No, I love the movie the way it is, and you know, Arthur Kopit's script is just beautiful, and Jeremy Kagan's direction, the acting. I was so pleased with it, and it's become kind of a classic on TV.
Well,
It's
yes.
been on TV probably 100 times. Now, the DVD is hard to find now. You showed it, and you said people go get it, but I don't know where you're going to get it. I think I've got...
eBay.
eBay. Oh, try eBay. Because I've got like the last 50 copies. It's not in circulation. It may be pirated somewhere, and I would never tell anyone to watch anything pirated unless it was completely out of circulation and you were being prevented from seeing it by that. So, you know, you look for it under also the title Roswell, the UFO Cover-Up.
That's what this,
Yeah, because they added that subtitle for the DVD, but that was never on the title.
I can understand because people might think it was about the TV
series. The series came later. They liked our title and...
Well, you've grown from UFO skeptic to UFO believer, but in recent times you've even gone beyond that.
Yeah.
You are now promoting the possibility of life after death.
Yes.
And that's a big step.
Yeah, it's a very big step.
Tell us about. I find this to be the best presentation on the subject. Of course, I've been involved in the paranormal for years. I've talked to people who've had out-of-body experiences and life after death experiences. But this proves that there is either life after death or there is some intelligence out there that's making us...
Well, first of all, this is called the Life After Death Project. If you're looking for it, it's easy to find online. I mean, you can stream it. But I'll say it became two DVDs because there's also the sequel. I just had so much material that couldn't fit in it. So it's almost 4 hours plus bonus materials. They put the first one on Sci-Fi after I was...
Yes, I saw that, like 2 o'clock in the morning or something.
Yeah, or midnight or something.
Yeah,
I make a lot of midnight movies. To not upset the mainstream. Because people that stay up at midnight are kooky anyway.
Open, I guess, is that right?
No, but the thing about this is it's another subject that I was just sucked into that I had no interest in. I never thought I was going to go in that direction until Forrest J. Ackerman passed away and made good on his promise. And his promise as a skeptic and a non-believer was that if he was wrong, and he found that he woke up to some great science fiction convention in the sky, because he was an aficionado of science fiction, very famous in that field, that if he was wrong, maybe he'd drop me a line. So, Tim, I got dropped a line. Other people got dropped a line after he passed. And
then the most bizarre one, I think, outside of the thing that you got there with
the ink.
The ink is the young guys, the science fiction fans who had gone to the mausoleum where
to his grave,
to where the body was entombed, and they knocked on the tomb, and then when they got back to the hotel room, they were on various websites, and one of the codes that you had to type in to get to the was Ackerman.
Ackerman 000.
Yeah.
You know, the timing of all of this was part of the impact of it, because he died in early December, I think December 4th of 2008.
No,
it was 92.
Okay, I think we should mention...
tell who he is.
Every young boy, especially who has ever followed horror or science fiction movies, would know who Forrest J. Ackerman is. He was the editor for many, many years of Famous Monsters magazine.
Yes.
And if you go back to the old issues, you'll find letters and photographs of then fans like Steven Spielberg and
Stephen King.
Yeah, everybody read the magazine, including me.
We all read it. We grew up with it.
Yeah.
We grew up with the magazine, and Forrest J. Ackerman was the editor, and we loved him. And he had a house in Hollywood that he called the Acker Mansion. And this house was filled in 18 rooms from floor to ceiling, including even in the bathrooms, with memorabilia from all the great science fiction and horror movies that we grew up with and loved, because Forry had collected everything. So, you know, he was born in the early 1900s, and he grew up with the silent movies first. You know, Metropolis was the Star Wars of his day. And he popularized science fiction. He came up with the term sci-fi. And we all felt that we had a connection to him through the personal style and approach he had at Famous Monsters magazine. You know, you felt he was talking to you, and he was telling you the secrets behind special effects and how they made these movies, and the important makeup men and the screenwriters. And he did it with such a sense of humor. He loved puns. He never could resist an opportunity to crack a joke. And he loved wordplay puns, especially twists of words. And he was always popping something at you that would get you to laugh. So I got to know Forry when I was a young film student. Well, first, when I was a young teenager, I was one of the winners in an early Famous Monsters amateur movie contest. So I got a letter from Forry to master movie maker Paul Davids. I'm 13 years old, and I'm a master movie maker, according to this guy, who's my hero.
He was right. He knew that.
He was a good predictor of the future, you think? So then I went to film school at the AFI, and I got to know him, and I visited the Ackerman umpteen times, you know, spending so many days going through the files and the folders of all the lobby cards and photos that he had in a great library. So we were buddies for decades. And I was one of the speakers at the tribute for him when he passed away. His caretaker of the last 10 years of his life, Joe Moe, put together, with help from others, a wonderful tribute at the Egyptian Theater in early March of 2009, a couple months after he died. And that day, the day of the tribute, was the day the weird stuff started. And it started with the two Canadian filmmakers, Ian Paul Johnson and Michael McDonald. They had made a documentary about Forry, a bio about him. I had made a film about Forry that became quite famous. You know it, called The Sci-Fi Boys. That's been on TV, you know, dozens of times too, and it's easy to find out there. And it's the history of special effects with Peter Jackson as the host, from the very early silent days up through Peter Jackson's King Kong. And it showed the tremendous influence of Forrest J. Ackerman. I'm just going to call him Forry from now on. Forry. Forry's influence on everyone who ever went into this field. No one escaped his influence. He was the Pied Piper. So these two Canadian filmmakers had made a film about him, and they're going to speak and show the film at his tribute. I'm going to speak at the tribute. That day, as you said, they went to the crypt, and they playfully knocked on his crypt and said, "Hey, Forry, are you there? You know, it's us." And they felt they got a response from him within an hour on 2 computers. And I heard the story. It was strange. And to me, I heard from him the same week. And I heard from him in a way that there was physical evidence that I could take to science labs, because it was a written message that was made through blacking out 4 words on a document. And there's no physical explanation for how this happened. I was alone in the house. The document was fine, nothing unusual about it at all. I'm out of the room briefly, and when I come back, it's still moist, where someone or something has blacked out 4 words very precisely at 2 different levels of intensity of darkness of the ink, still moist. I got scientists involved studying the ink, and after 3 years of studies of something they thought they would wrap up in a week, they are on record as saying, science can't explain this. They cannot duplicate it. And you see their explanations in the film. One of the scientists has just written a 30-page paper saying this, which will be in a book that we're writing about it. I say we because I've joined up with Dr. Gary Schwartz, who is a professor in Arizona who studies life after death and mediums. And he's writing a book with me that will document it wasn't just 1 or 2 or 3 weird things after Fari passed. It's been 100 things. It's been 100 things. It's been like he's been in touch, and these things, they relate to him. They're strange. You never know when to expect that something's going to happen. Some people may say, well, some of it is coincidence, synchronicity, but a lot of it is purely physical.
Well, you know, now, you sent me a couple of copies of the DVD set.
Yeah.
I was anxious to show it to my friends who may be a little skeptical about the subject, but at least interested in it. About 2 weeks ago, around the time you called to tell me you were coming into town, I was sitting there at night, summing through the TV. We got 1,002 stations and nothing to watch. You know how that is. So I came to a movie that I had never seen before, and it was called Premium Rush. Okay, so I asked a friend of mine, I said, is this worthwhile seeing? And she explained to me in simple terms, the plot of the movie. It's about New York bicycle messengers. Okay, so that didn't sound too exciting, but I turned it on, and it had a conspiracy involved in it. They're trying to grab this package from this kid who has to deliver it within a couple of hours, or they're going to lose the money, or whatever it is. Okay, so that's all right. So I'm watching it, and the guy who's trying to grab the package, who is a dirty cop, New York City detective, somebody asks him, "What's your name?" Because he shows him a badge, and he says, "My name is Forrest J. Ackerman." And I said, he couldn't possibly have said that. He didn't mean that that was his real name. Obviously, it's a... Put it there.
It's a phony name he's given in the story.
In the story, right. Okay, and 2 or 3 times, another time he shows his badge to somebody, he says, "I'm from the Internal Revenue Service," but it's a New York City detective. So she says, "You're not... from the Internal Revenue," the badge says New York City detective. And he said, "Well, I'm Forrest J. Ackerman." So this goes on throughout the movies. I said, there's got to be something to... Now, and this movie here was right next to the TV set because I had just put it on to watch it for like the third
And your
time.
point is there's 1,000 movies you could have chosen to watch at that time.
And that's not, I mean, it's not like watching something, I don't even know how many times
You've
they
never
show
heard
it.
of this
I've never
one.
heard of it before, and I don't know how many other people have either. But I have a whole list. In fact, I'm working on a DVD or a movie or something. It's just about synchronicity. I can go into a town that I've never been before and run into people that used to live in New York or that I know. They don't know I'm in town. They don't have my phone number. They don't know where I'm going to be, and they're there.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating.
I think that there is someone controlling this. I don't know. I mean, it's not
the master intelligence of the universe is,
or somewhere below that level. I don't know. I mean, John Keel, Charles Fort would say we're all kind of like chess pieces on a cosmic chessboard.
Yeah.
And somebody's moving the pieces every once in a while. Maybe that's their way of entertaining themselves and having a good laugh. And they know they've got a sucker here who'll report this and tell everybody about it, because most people who talk about their synchronicities, you kind of look at them and your eyes glaze over because they're only synchronicities to them, usually, I mean.
Well, that's part of the meaning of it, because when psychiatrist Carl Jung came up with that term synchronicity, he was describing a type of coincidence that is, first of all, extremely improbable that it would ever happen, but that is it's imbued with very powerful meaning to the specific beholder of that coincidence, where it means something more to the person that's suddenly perceiving it than it would to
what does it mean
to anybody else. And there have been books written about synchronicities, a lot of books, and the ultimate philosophical question is it all just coincidence? Because the 1 in a million shot is always going to come up sometime. Or is there agenticity, an agent, a thinking agent behind it, which is the word that the skeptics, they hate the concept that there's any agenticity in what they consider a cold, dry, dead universe that has no God and no intelligence and so you either look at it one way or the other. Now, and I choose to look at it that everything is interconnected, and the universe is constantly full of surprises and ironies for us, and that some of these messages that seem very personal are real messages, and and they are personal. But I want to say that the case for life after death does not rest on synchronicities. There's all kinds of evidence of this. Victor Zamet has written a book, A Lawyer Presents the Case for the Afterlife, where it's, I think, 22 chapters with 22 different types of evidence that would make us conclude that our consciousness goes on after we pass away.
I mean, do you think that there's an actual, are we talking about simply some kind of random consciousness, or are we talking about a place that we go to where there are millions of other souls? And
well, like in UFOs, it depends upon how far you want to go with the theories before you get off the train. You say, wait a minute, I'm in La La Land.
Yeah.
And I guess everybody has to decide. I mean, Victor Zamet and Mark Macy and others will present evidence for actual voices of deceased people communicating.
Pictures now on computers and
conversations over the telephone with Rodave, I think was the name of the scientist who was one of the first to research electronic voice phenomena, and he passed away. And Mark Macy, you can go to his website and listen to a conversation he had where Rodave, he says, telephoned him from the dead. And is it Rodave's voice? It sure sounds like it. I mean, you know, the skeptic would say, "Oh, hoax. Somebody's got to be. It's got to be a trick." You know.
We're all sitting there.
We might all start out
this stuff up all day and night.
It's okay to start out thinking that way, but the case just keeps building and building and building. I mean, for me, you know, I've got 100 things that have happened to me now. Actual mind-boggling things. You know, I have a plastic mask of the face of Forrest in my home office that I got at his estate sale. And it was in his Ackerman mansion for many, many years, on top of a costume of him, representing what he wore to the first science fiction convention in 1938 or 39. And I have this mask. And it's been in the same place for 4 years. And the day I got the phone call, in the morning I get the phone call telling me my film is going to be broadcast on the Sci-Fi Channel, which means it's not going to just be a home movie anymore. You know, people are going to hear about it. It's going to be a real thing out there in the real world. That's great news. So was Fari on the other side happy about this? Well, let me tell you what happened. I went out to lunch. There's nobody in my house. The doors are locked. The door to my office is closed. There's no open windows or fans to blow anything around. And when I returned to the room, the face mask of Fari had moved 10 feet across the room. There was no one there to physically do it. Okay. Well, see the Life After Death project, and you'll see how it builds and builds with hundreds of things that have continued now. It's 5 years, and it still goes on.
Now, is there any message that he has actually
Yes.
said? Yes. Okay.
Well, I think the message is, I personally, this is my personal conclusion from it all. He gave me an assignment. He didn't believe in life after death. And those of his friends who are staunch atheists who don't believe in it either, some of them are irritated with me for putting words in his mouth after he's gone and saying he can't defend himself now against your claims that there's an afterlife. This isn't fair to his legacy. And my response is, this is my responsibility to his legacy. I am a witness. I was a close friend. I was loyal to who the man was and what his contribution was. And I would never do anything to distort that or detract from that. But I think that something happened after he passed. He was wrong. And that there is a way to bridge the gap between the universes or the worlds or the dimensions, and that I've been notified again and again and again and again, as have some others. And the point of it is, I was wrong. Let's set the record straight. You know, you're a filmmaker. These Canadians are filmmakers. He went to people that, he's a publicity hound, right? He went to people that could get the story out. And I've spent 5 years now getting the story out, that life goes on. It doesn't end when we're in the grave. As a matter of fact, what they lower into the grave, it isn't even us anymore. It's just the remains of what we inhabited as a vehicle while we were here, but consciousness goes on. Now, where that exists, that continued consciousness, religions have their own answers to that, and spiritualists have their own answers to that, and philosophers. Nobody really knows, but somehow continued contact is possible and happens.
Now, do you think that there's any possible connection between UFOs and the afterlife?
I haven't really considered that. I mean, somebody like Whitley Strieber has considered that, and he thinks so, because, I mean, he'll tell stories about how in some abductions, you know, people are seeing dead people aboard a craft or something, you know. Right. I haven't wanted to go there because I sort of have this thing about don't mix apples and oranges. If other people want to do it, okay, but I'm just going to take the evidence I have and not try to do anything that might strain it to the point where the credibility snaps for most of my audience.
Yeah, but the credibility has... we are dealing with
something incredible. Incredible.
Now, let me tell you a little anecdotal story here.
Yeah.
We all know who Kenneth Arnold
of course.
He was the person who coined the term flying saucer.
Yeah. He saw the 7 craft or so from Mount Rainier.
That's right. Okay, well now, Kenneth Arnold had more than one UFO sighting. In fact, I think he had 7 or 8 UFO sightings. Most people do not realize this.
Yeah.
Well, Kenneth Arnold did not believe that UFOs were extraterrestrials.
Okay.
All right. On Kenneth Arnold, the anniversary of Kenneth Arnold's sighting, June 24th, several well-known ufologists have passed away. Jackie Gleason, Frank Edwards, I think Morris K. Jessup, Frank Edwards' publisher, Lyle Stewart.
They're all passing away on the anniversary of...
Yes. And do you know what Kenneth Arnold thought UFOs were? He thought that they were vehicles coming here to take the souls of the departed over to some other dimension.
Okay, well, that's what he thought. I don't know. I want to hear that from Paul Davids.
Well, you heard it from me.
Okay. You heard it from
Timothy Beckley. I'm Mr. UFO. I can be more speculative.
You can do that.
Than that.
Yes. Because don't forget, also, one of my films is called, and I want the listeners to look this one up, too. I'm very proud of my movie called Jesus in India. Jesus in India, about the missing years of Christ from age 13 to 30, not talked about at all, you know, in the New Testament except for one sentence. So, where was he? And in India, there's a lot of people that say, well, he came to India.
I believe there's even a burial area there.
Well, in Kashmir.
Yeah.
There's a tomb for Yuzazov. Yuzas sounds a little bit like... there's a lot of dispute about that. And to film this movie, Jesus in India, I went to India. I had a crew there. 6 weeks we traveled across 4,000 miles. We went to where that tomb is, and it's a political hotspot, and there's, you know, soldiers with rifles every block, and it's dangerous. State Department said don't go there. But we filmed at that tomb, and there's a lot of fantastic stories about the tomb, many written up by Suzanne Olson. She's written books about that, and you know, so of others. There's been books written about the Jesus in India theory, but I'm really proud of the fact that I went to India to explore it. I can't say we proved it, but they say where there's smoke, there's fire, and if you see Jesus in India, you'll see a lot of smoke. It's a really fantastic story, but there are some people that want to mix the Jesus story with flying saucers too. You know, like Billy Mayer.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I won't go there, but if other people want to go there, that's their business.
Well, now we're pushing forward here. I mean, I have a few minutes, but what are you working on next? I mean, are we going to go past this?
Well, there's going to be a book about this, and the tentative title is The Ninth Wonder of the Universe. There's going to be a book, and I'd like the viewers to know that I'm an accomplished poet with 3 books of poetry published. Some of it very serious and some of it very funny, and I'd like you to find them online. There's poems to read while driving on freeways and other ways to die laughing. There's poems to read when you run out of weed. And we recommend that you read the book, not smoke it. And then there's left brain poems for right brain people. That's the one of the serious poems. You'll find a poem about Fari there. You'll find a lot about Edgar Allan Poe. So I'm very proud of that, and some of these things will end up maybe in a little TV series I'll put together. I play a character called Professor Hack Hard Drive. He's my alter ego. I dress up in sort of a pirate uniform and gray tousled hair and with a pipe, and I'm a professor at dubious university. And
I graduated from there.
I'm sure you did. I think I've seen your diploma.
Weren't you working on a Fate magazine concept?
Oh, we tried so hard. You know, God bless Phyllis Galdi, who is the publisher of Fate magazine, who's so devoted and dedicated and has done a wonderful job of keeping the magazine alive. My yellow hat is off to her. I'm Yellow Hat Productions. And I tried to put it together as a television series. Didn't happen with me. Maybe that'll happen with somebody else. I love Fate magazine.
Who doesn't? That was the place that I sold my first article.
I also love 14 Times.
Yes. That's about it. There isn't too much else out there.
No. But I also have to put in a good word for the Society of Psychical Research in England. They've been around for, I'm sure, more than 100 years, and they gave a wonderful, thought-provoking review to the Life After Death Project. And, you know, that's a group that has been doing some really great research, including, you know, about mediums, and some mediums just are overwhelming in what they can bring. Not all.
Has Fari come through any mediums?
Yes, in the Life After Death Project, there's 2 mediums that were selected by Dr. Gary Schwartz of University of Arizona, Tucson.
In fact, I have not seen the second disc, so I...
Okay. No, but I think maybe it was too late at night and you were snoring it. They were in the first disc. There was Orit Ishyemini Tomer of Israel and Catherine Young of Tucson. And we filmed each for about an hour, and they didn't know who I was. I was just the man with the camera. They agreed I could film them. And they didn't know who I wanted to communicate with, just that I was hoping to hear from a friend of mine who was deceased. One of them wanted the first name. He said Forrest. The other never got a name. And what they brought through was just overwhelming. And you see it in the film. I don't know. I was very, very impressed, and have been repeatedly, with the talents of some people who can do this. In spite of all the naysaying of the skeptics who dismiss it all, you know, as hoaxes and charlatanism, and it's just like magic tricks. But no, some people have a great gift, and I respect that.
One final question. Will either UFOs or life after death ever be proven to the satisfaction of science?
Oh, I think so. Oh, I do think so. Absolutely. Just like rocket propulsion was eventually proven, because you know the New York Times wrote an editorial saying that rocket propulsion in outer space was impossible because there's nothing for the blast to push against. So there were times when mankind knew that there could never be rockets, there could never be heavier than air flight. Most people didn't believe that Kitty Hawk happened for a year or two after they flew the first plane at Kitty Hawk. And Thomas Jefferson didn't believe in meteors. I mean, in those days they called them rocks falling from the sky, and those who reported seeing them were extremely suspect. They were lunatics. And Thomas Jefferson is on record, you can find it, that anyone who would report a rock falling from the sky is a liar. He didn't know about meteors. So someday science will get it right about UFOs, life after death. Gary Schwartz believes we'll have a soul phone someday, maybe, where we can, you know, talk to our grandma.
The way after tube.
The way after tube. I like that. I like that. And with that thought, all of this fringe stuff will become mainstream. Just like science fiction did. It was just fringe stuff. When Forrest Ackerman and Ray Harryhausen and Ray Bradbury were into this stuff in the 1930s, and they thought that man would fly to the moon in their lifetime, they were crackpots. So most of my movies, if you look at the list of them all, are about crackpots. But they're the crackpots who got it right.
Well, Paul, I want to thank you. This has been a wonderful afternoon. And don't forget to pick up, if you can find Roswell, maybe look on eBay or Amazon, the Life After Death project, which is your latest release. And
Jesus in India. And for Catholics, Before We Say Goodbye is one of my movies. And I think you'll love it. A lot about Our Lady of Guadalupe in that story.
This one is a must-see. And then to promote some of our own stuff, if you haven't gotten this yet, this is our latest book on UFOs, UFOs Wicked This Way Come. And I want to thank you all for coming to our channel, Mr. UFO's Secret UFO Files, and please spread the word, tell your friends, and we'll have a new interview posted every couple of weeks, thanks to our technical support by Peter Bernard and Carol here taking notes. And to all of you out there, I say a fond farewell and see you up there.